Page 20. Okay, so we're going to record this for our boarders that are still in Hong Kong or still in Africa. So, look, let's get our past paper questions booklets out. We'll go through the ones that you've done, and if we have time, then we'll go on and look at some other aspects of this topic. So, 4, 25, 26, 27, okay. So if we look at the photograph then on this page here, so that's the photograph on page 29. I'll keep that up there, but we'll talk through the answers to page 28 because that's where the questions are. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so the photograph shows a section through a mammalian heart. The aorta has been cut open. Okay, so that's the aorta cut open there. That's the aorta there. And the semilunar, the aorta and the semilunar valve are labelled. So the semilunar valve, I've just drawn all over it, but you can see it's not great in your photocopy, but it's showing you where it is, and we say that's the aorta. So if we look at this, they have put labelling lines. This is, what side of the heart have I just drawn round? Is that the left or the right? The left. That's the left. So that's the right. Okay. So if we look at that, we have to label A, B, and C. Well, C is easy. It's the ventricle wall. Now, I realise that your photocopy is a photocopy of a photocopy, so it's not great quality. But, I mean, I'll put some actual photographs from websites up, from past papers, and you'll see that they're not much easier, all right? So, labelling photographs, we said this before, it's all about you knowing what the diagram should look like and then applying your knowledge to what you see in front, which isn't always the perfect shape that you expect. So C is pointing to the wall of the ventricle, or the left ventricle wall. So if we look at these structures here, if I get rid of my highlights and stuff there. So this is B here, and this is A. What do you think A is pointing to? Well, it's actually pointing to one of the flaps of that valve. So what valve is that? Atrioventricular valve. Other names that would also get you marks are bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. But atrioventricular is what your specification calls it, and that's the easiest name as well. You get a mark for that. If you'd said the flap of the atrioventricular valve, that also would have got you a mark. So what's B pointing to? The little stringy bits that are attached to that? Chordae tendineae. So, as we said, this is the left side of the heart, and it tells you that in the next part of the question. Describe two features visible in the photograph which indicate this is the left side of the heart. So it's two features. It's not the fact that you're looking at it and you've worked it out. It's looking at the heart. What makes the left side of the heart different from the right? Thicker wall. So you would, if you look at that, there's the thickness of the wall there. There's the thickness of the wall on the other side. So you would say the left ventricle wall is thicker than the right. What else? If you remembered that the atrioventricular valve on the left side had two flaps, that would also have got you a mark. Or if you said the blood entering the aorta comes from the left side of the heart, that's also another way of explaining that. Jimmy, you need to put your mask over your mouth and your nose. I know, but it's something we all have to do. Another thing, we know the pressure is much greater in the left side of the heart. And so actually the chordae tendineae will be thicker because they need to withstand higher pressure. Now, I wouldn't have expected you to have realised that or worked that out. It's just another piece of information. It's in the mark scheme because some people might have come up with that idea, might have realised it, or might have been taught that, but you don't need to write it down to get full marks. I'm sure everybody wrote down that the left wall is thicker than the right, which was your first easy mark. And then if you said, that the blood leaves the left side to enter the aorta, and you can see that on the diagram, or you can see that in the photograph, or if you said, there's 2 flaps of the valve on the left side, that would have got you the second mark. And then the next question says, describe the events in the cardiac cycle. Hi. We're going through questions on the heart, the ones that Dr. Anderson gave out spare copies yesterday. Yeah, I threw them up yesterday. So we're on page 28, 29 at the moment here. So, semilunar valve. So we're talking about this valve here. Talking about that valve that I've sort of tried to highlight in red. Semilunar valve is important in ensuring the one-way flow of blood through the heart. Describe the events in the cardiac cycle which lead to the semilunar valve opening. So it's not everything. It's not describe the whole cardiac cycle. What is it that forces that valve open? Dylan, what is it forces that valve open?
Aortic systole.
Not contraction of the atria. Contraction of the ventricles. Okay, so you don't need to talk about what happens in the atria, because what forces that open? Okay, over then on page 20, is that page 30? Yeah. So contraction of heart muscle causes an increase in pressure. What is the term for the phase during which heart muscle is contracted? So that's systole.
Dr. Anderson done this one.
Oh, she's done this one? Because it's repeated later on? Yeah, okay, so you've done that. Page 38, I think it is, yeah. Dead on. So, just draw, okay, so that's the aorta leaving the ventricle. Okay, so we've got the atrium up there, blood flows in there, blood gets pushed down there, this closes, and then we get ventricular systole. The question says, what happens to lead to this valve here being open? So it's the fact that the ventricles contract. 1 mark, that's the first thing. So that increases the pressure in the ventricles. At what point is the valve forced open? Ethan, what's the point that makes the valve force open?
The pressure
in the
ventricle.
And what does it have to be equal to, or greater than, or less than?
Greater than the pressure in the heart.
Yeah. So you need to give all that information. So if you just said, it's the pressure causes it, you need to say, once the pressure in the ventricle exceeds the pressure in the aorta or the artery, the valve is forced open. So you know all that. But the difficulty at AS and A level is getting the facts down on paper. Because a lot of you are you've got a good idea. It's all to do with pressure. It's all to do with contraction of the heart. So let's talk about atrial systole. But the question clearly says, describe the events in the cardiac cycle which lead to the semilunar valve opening. So it's all to do with contraction of the ventricle, causes an increase in pressure inside the ventricle. And once it exceeds the pressure in the artery, the valve is forced open. 3 clear points there. If there's 3 marks, you're never going to get 3 marks if you only write 2 points or 1 point. And during which stage in the cardiac cycle does the semilunar valve close? Well, first stage is atrial systole. Then you've got ventricular systole or systole. And then you've got complete relaxation of the heart, which is diastole. So that is then, once the ventricle relaxes, you enter diastole, and that's where the pressure in the ventricle drops. Pressure in the aorta is going to be pretty high, so that's going to force the valve closed there. So the answer is diastole, or diastole. It doesn't matter how you pronounce it. Whoops. About that. Has she done that one?
She did the rest of the questions in that booklet.
All right, okay. So what do you want me to do then? Nothing. What will we do? Do you have a good understanding of the graph then? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, please.
Do you want a Kahoot?
Yes.